church thing. It is fantastic. First off, before I get into anything with this morning, I wanted to thank Pam for speaking last week from her heart. Did an awesome job. I loved it. Something I'm still chewing on, which is always a sign of a good message, is when you have to keep chewing on it for a couple days after. That's what I always hope for. So, this morning we are starting a new series, and it is called Communication Breakdown. Shout out to Led Zeppelin there. But anyway, the Communication Breakdown. And let me explain why we're going to deal with this for 3 weeks. Communication is changing. And I don't know if you've noticed it changing, but it has been. Especially the last 10 to 20 years. And it's important for us to understand, in light of God's Word, what communication should be. Now, my question to start this morning is simply this. Is there a difference between conversation and communication? Okay, I hear a bunch of people saying yes. Well, before I give an answer to that, I'm going to just let it speak for itself. It's rhetorical a bit. Is there a difference? Yeah, I think there is, to be honest. But I want to go back a little bit and give a history lesson, especially for those of you that are young. I'm going to take you back. I've lived the whole 42 years. Feel like I'm 80 at times, and that's probably because of my kids. But 42 years I've walked on this earth. Some of you have lived a few years beyond that, and you have even more exposure to how communication has changed. Or I should say communication tools have changed in my lifetime. Now, growing up, there was this thing in our house, and it would make a noise, and the thing is, you had no idea who was on the other side, okay? And there was no way of knowing. You had to lift this thing up off that was attached by a cord and talk on it to find out who it was. And you know what? If it was somebody you didn't like, or if it was a telemarketer, oh well, I guess you could hang up on them, which would be rude, but it's called the telephone. Yes, the telephone, obviously, when I was a kid. And you know, privacy back then was a really long phone cord. This was pre-cordless phone. So, you know, when I wanted to talk to a girl I was interested in, I had to pull it, 25 feet to the point it's like I'm trying my best to hold on to it and go back into the laundry room so my parents wouldn't spy on me. So the telephone was great. The telephone was great. But then along came this thing called the answering machine. Oh, yes, the answering machine. I had a lot of fun with the answering machines in college in my dorm room. We had some of the best messages. People would call me and my roommates up just to hear them. We did songs, we did all this stuff. So the answering machine was great because here's what the answering machine did. Now, if we'll say Beatrice calls and you don't feel like talking to Aunt Beatrice, you can let it go to the machine. And then you can stand by the machine and hear who it is and pretend you're not there. And if it was somebody you wanted to talk to, oh, hey, yeah, I was just in the other room and I heard you, and play it off for a coy, like, you can now screen your calls. And then this other thing comes along, caller ID. Even better. Now their phone number's popping right up and I can choose to totally ignore it. How awesome is that? Now, screening our calls. I'm just being resourceful of my time, with caller ID. Well, then the cell phones started to show up. Okay? Cell phones, wonderful inventions, great things. Email came out around this time. Emails, I could pop a message to anyone in the world. And, they had that dial-up thing, with all the noises that it made. They could check my email. It may have taken 20 minutes to download, but hey, I got a message across the world pretty quickly. Cell phones came, and now I could talk to anyone from anywhere. You might have been up in the woods. You may have been on the phone. Yeah, it was a little staticky. Yes, you were paying $15 a minute for it, but hey, look at what I can do. You had the huge bag phone, that they had in some of the rich people had in their cars. Yeah, so that was great. Again, communication tool. Now I can be accessed anywhere. Anyone can get me anytime as long as I have a signal. Then we had texting take over. When I first started youth ministry around 18, 19 years ago, texting was just becoming a thing. And it was the greatest thing in the world. My parents couldn't do it. So that was good, because they couldn't pester me, right? Now they can, by the way. My mom's gotten on the emoji bandwagon, so I'm getting emojis from her. So with that, texting, I can, again, just a random thought, shoot it to somebody, get an instant reply. Now, we've invented all these great things. We have new messaging apps that allow us unbelievable amounts of contact with each other. But just because we've invented 100 different ways of communicating doesn't mean that we use them for communicating. Sometimes we have 100 different ways of avoiding communicating. We can now blow people off completely. We can fire angry emails or messages or whatever to a person and unload on them, but it's thoughtful because I was able to make sure I edited my message perfectly. But we can fire it off to a person and not actually have to deal with the person face to face. See, what's happened with all of these communication things we have is we've created buffer zones. It started with the answering machine, and if you still have an answering machine, awesome. Invite me over, I want to see this because it's been a long time since I've seen one. But answering machines, we started to create this buffer. You know what? Don't feel like dealing with you. You're not worth my time. I got other things going on. I'm busy. I'll get back to you. Or I won't get back to you. I'll say I'll get back to you, but I won't. And we've created this buffer zone between us and other people. And that has caused something that we'll talk about today. It's going to be our main focus. It's caused a change in all of us. We're going to talk about it even next week and how it impacts just us talking to each other on sensitive issues and such. And if we're going to come down to the reason why we created this buffer zone, can we be really honest? The reason we came up with this buffer zone is, yes, my time's important. Yes, all that stuff. But people are messy. I don't know if you noticed that or not. I don't know what in here is. But people are messy. And frankly, if I have to have one of these drawn-out, face-to-face conversations with the person, it is going to be excruciating. I would rather have electrical probes, put on my head or whatever they are and shoot my brain full electrically. I mean, whatever it is, I don't want to have a face-to-face conversation. Let's just do it digitally. I can keep you at an arm's distance, keep it safe. I don't have to deal with your emotions and all that stuff. People are messy. So we avoid it. We don't want anything to do with getting into it with them. And this has impacted several different areas. It's impacted our work. Some of you have a job that I would bet, not all of you, there's a contact that you have several times. You've never heard their voice. You've never seen their face. You've only had digital interaction with them. Mind-blowing. It's impacted our relationships. Dating, marriage, friendships, it's impacted that. It used to be back in the day when you wanted to, I'm dating myself, when I was in high school, we wrote these things called notes. You wanted to ask a girl out, but you were afraid she might say no, and you had to, maintain your cred. You would do that, very mature note, will you go out with me, yes, no, hand it off to them. Or, I think we should break up, and you give it to their friend to give to them so you can clear town. We now have this whole other way of doing it. We do it through text or email or message or some form of communication like this. Because now I don't have to deal with the person. And it's impacted our relationships. There was actually a story that I heard of a woman. She was interviewing a new nanny for her daughter. So she goes to the potential nanny's house. She knocks on the door. The roommate answers, texting away. She says, yes, I'm here to interview such and such for a nanny position. And the roommate's like, oh, okay, I'll text her. She's like, no, her room's right there. You can just knock on the door. Oh, no, knocking on the door is way too intrusive. Let me text her. She was 15 feet away. That was it. That was intrusive to knock on a door. It's impacted how we deal with each other, even in conversations and friendships and relationships. It's also impacted our experiences and how we have experiences and what we're distracted by during experiences. Now, it's been a whole 3 weeks and the glow has not worn off. And those of you who know me, you know what's about to come. It's my weekly reminder that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. 42 years I suffered. 42, okay? Now, the Eagles win. What a great moment that was for me. And, the one moment that stuck out to me, and there was many. Obviously, Nick Foles lifting up the trophy and all that, and I waited all my life to see that. But there was one moment that if you watched from beginning to end that everyone was talking about online, immediately when it happened and still happening. They've been actually creating jokes from this. You remember this picture? Justin Timberlake is performing, multi-million-dollar performer, all this. Hundreds of millions of people watching, and he starts walking up in the crowd, and this kid's there, and he snaps a selfie, and then for like 10 minutes, it seems, he's there trying to figure out how to put it on his Instagram, put it on all his different things, send it to his friends and say, hey, look where I'm at. You're on TV. 100 million people are looking at you. And you are so like sealed off from the reality of everything around you. It was crazy, but man, when I saw that, I was like, oh my word, that is our culture right there. Missing the experience because of this artificial communication he was getting sucked into. Oh, it also impacts our families. There was a survey recently taken that said families who all have cell phones, and that includes children, half of them will admit that they have texted one of the family members when they're in the same house. The same house. When I was growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, my dad had his form of communication. If he was upstairs, and we needed to come upstairs because we were going to have family devotions and so on, Dad had his method of texting, and it was this. Stop on the floor, walk upstairs, boom, it worked. I didn't even have to work my thumbs out, you know? That was communication. And now we're texting people within the house. Let me tell you why this is concerning to many psychologists, because child development, young ages, and even into the teen years, psychologists will tell you it is crucial for children to know how to communicate face-to-face. My son Silas, he's only almost 5 months now. It is crucial for him to get that face-to-face time with Beth and I, and his brothers and sisters. And that begins to teach him how to connect with other people. If he doesn't get that, or if I hand him an iPad so he can have face-to-face with me, there's a breakdown in his maturing and his development. And it's concerning to many psychologists. I saw a quote that said this: by now several generations of children have grown up expecting parents and caretakers to be only half there. We have a generation growing up that just expects their family to be distracted from them. And that scares me. Scares me to death. It's sad that it's become literally unusual for you to have a face-to-face conversation with someone. It's unusual. It's scary. Back in Baltimore, I challenged a bunch of people. I was like, hey, you want to freak people out? When they text you, call them right back. See what happens. Well, I had a student named Alex, and Alex is like, I'll do that. Alex is up for any challenge. Alex goes, and sure enough, his friend texts him, and he calls him. His friend's like, oh, what's going on? Why are you calling me? Is it an emergency? What's going on? Are you in the hospital? No, you texted me. I just thought I'd talk. And it freaked his friends out. Now, continuing the story, here's the honest truth. There's occasions I'll shoot him a text. He's an IT guy now and all this. And guess what he does? He calls me. And I'm like, so I'm guilty of this. But it's become unusual for us to talk to people or look at them in the eyes and try to understand their feelings. We don't communicate the same. It's changed. Some would say for the better because we have all these different avenues to do it, but some would say for the worse. For one word, and that is a loss of empathy. Empathy. It's gone. It's dying. We don't know how to do it anymore because we use these superficial ways of communicating with each other. Do you wrestle with this? I know I do. And, man, talk about a prophetic movie that came out years ago for children. You want to talk about a prophetic movie? How about the movie WALL-E? If you've not seen WALL-E, you need to see WALL-E. Fantastic movie. Pixar always knocks them out of the park. But where all people become are people in these easy chairs, getting whatever they want, whenever they want, and they're communicating with people right beside them with the screen in front of them. And we look at that back then, probably when the movie came out, we're like, yeah, that's kind of funny. We're doing it. It's not funny anymore. It's prophetic. How scary is that? There's a man named John Culkin, and he had this quote. It was actually inspired by something Winston Churchill had said before, and he said this: we shape our tools, and thereafter, they shape us. We build our technology, we build our forms of communication, whatever it is, letters, let's, even go there. We form them, we build them, but then they start to shape us. They sort of conform to their limitations. And with some of this artificial technology communication that we have, We've conformed to it because we've forgotten how to empathize with other people. Another quote I read by Sherry Turkle, which she wrote a book, Reclaiming Conversations, a really good read for me. She said this: these days we want to be with each other, but also everywhere, connected to wherever else we want to be, because what we value most is control over where we put our attention. And I read that and I was like, boom, that's it. We don't want to empathize because we want to be able to control things. We don't want to deal with other people's mess because we want to control it. What's comfortable, what's convenient for me. There was a poll taken of college students, and they said in the last 5 years, because of all this digital interaction and how they say, wow, I communicate well because I have 150 different ways to do it. College students have dropped 40% in their empathy with each other. I don't know how they measured this, but they said you've seen a 40% drop, that they just don't understand that sometimes when they send things, they have consequences. They hurt people. They anger people. But they don't see it. They don't see it at all. So empathy is dying. We'd rather talk to a computer or a robot. Siri, you know? I better not set off and say, hey Siri, because then my phone's probably going to, and I think it actually just beep. So, okay. But we'd rather talk to that than to talk to a human being. I'm setting all this up for this, because we need to get back to what God's Word says about communication. I want to talk about this thing of empathy today. And I want to sort of go against the culture that we're surrounded by, with this as families, and so on. I realize some we're not going to be able to get rid of. This is not a burn your cell phone. We're not having a cell phone burning afterwards, okay? But this is about, let's start to reclaim empathy and real interaction with people. I think all of this boils down to a few basic principles that many of us are familiar with from God's Word. And we're going to take a look at it if you want to follow along the Hope Church app, technology. If you want to follow along in that, or we're going to have it up on the screen. Go old school with that. Philippians 2:3-4 is where we're going to start. And Philippians 2:3-4 gets to the core of this problem of empathy, something we need to be reminded of with our communication. It says this: do nothing from rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others. Do nothing from rivalry or conceit. What does that mean? That means don't think that your problems are more important than other people's. Don't think your time is more precious than other people's. Don't think your emotional bandwidth is more important than other people's. And he builds on it. He says, you know what? Think of others more highly than yourself. Get off your high horse. Put them first. I'm not going to lie. This is a tough practice. Some people say, well, this is a basic thing that Jesus gave us. It's a basic principle of the Bible. It's hard. And the sad part is there's probably areas in my life I haven't even realized this impacts. The more I begin to unpack it, the more I begin to unfold it. And it impacts our communication. That I can't be concerned about the things that are most important to me. I need to be concerned about what's most important to other people. It says not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. It says we're supposed to treat each other significant, which means exceptional value. To view them as a VIP. Many of us have a VIP, a celebrity, something like that, an important person that I guarantee if we were to actually have the opportunity to have face-to-face with them, they would have our undivided attention. They would. That's how we're to treat each other. Undivided attention, not thinking of ourselves, our interests, and all of that. To think of them first, more important, significant. And to think of their interests. Have a conversation about their interests, not just your interests. What are they interested in? Do you even know? Do you know what your kids are interested in? Do you know what your spouse is interested in? Get to know them. Become a student. Put them before yourself. Galatians 6:2 continues on this focus, and it says this in Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Carry each other's burdens. In this context, it's used as a general term, but here's what it's also talking about. Not just talking about how hard it can be to deal with people, but also what they struggle with. their burdens, their struggle with sin, their temptations. See, when all of us are helping each other lift a heavy load off each other's shoulders, our burden becomes lighter and their burden becomes lighter. But too many times we allow them to carry their own burden because it's just a pain to get involved with that. I don't have the time. It's just too much for me. I have enough to carry. Carry one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. What is that law of Christ? Love your neighbor as yourself. I heard about a comedian who has been actually talking a lot about communication technology recently, and he looked at his crowd and he said, how many of you have ever broken up with a person via a text? And he said that everyone's hands went up. He said, fantastic, hands down. He said, how many of you want a person to break up with you via text? No hands went up. Because it's easy for me. But it's going to require me, though. If I'm going to carry another's burdens, I'm going to be concerned about how they react. I want to know how they're going to react. 1 Peter 3, 8, and 9 goes further and says this. Finally, all of you, be like-minded. In other words, live in harmony with each other. Be like-minded. Be sympathetic. Love one another. We just heard that. Be compassionate. And the tough one, humble. Get off your high horse, as I said. My concerns are not as important as other people's. If I'm going to empathize with them, if I'm going to be sympathetic, as this verse says, I'm going to have to view them more important. I'm going to have to put them first in my conversations and my communications with them. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. I'm not going to lie. Verse 9, pause that one. That's going to come back up next week because we need to learn how to interact on sensitive topics. Again, if we're going to fulfill the law of Christ. I'll stay, that's where I'll leave it. Stay tuned on that one for next week. We need to be sympathetic with each other, to understand a person's feelings and to feel for them. I can't do that using artificial means. It's tough for me. If a person sends me something, talking about they're angry with me or whatever, they don't like something about me, I'm going to be honest, it's hard for me to really understand that from them. And it's hard for me to actually have a real conversation with them, real communication with them, if it's only done that way. It's totally different when I sit across from a person and I talk to them, and I listen to them. And they listen to me. And we understand each other better. And you know what happens out of that? It draws us closer to each other. It should be the goal of this, to love one another. That's what we're commanded to do. They'll know we're Christians by our love. They'll know we're Christians by our love for each other and for everyone. We had a perfect example of a person who can empathize. And you know where I'm going with this, and that was Jesus. Jesus was the perfect example of empathy. And I want to look at this verse out of Hebrews 4. And it says this about Jesus. It says, for we do not have a high priest, that's Jesus. We do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. But we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are. And he did not sin. We have a perfect high priest. Jesus was a perfect high priest. He was someone who cared about our spiritual being. And here's the thing. He can empathize with our weakness because he chose to not save humanity from heaven and the comforts of heaven and say, I'm sure he could have come up with a plan to save all humanity from sin, from heaven. But he didn't. He chose to come to earth. He chose to put on human flesh. He chose to live within the limitations of that human flesh. He chose to come into this messy world at a messy time and have a bunch of disciples who were a straight up mess and be surrounded by other messy people. Could have done it from far off, but he didn't. And because of it, it says he's able to empathize with our weaknesses. He's been tempted in every way. Here's the thing. Jesus was tempted when he was here on earth, but without sin, he never sinned. Here's the thing. If you've ever overcome a struggle, in a hard, difficult struggle, whatever it is, a temptation that is very hard to overcome, you have a greater understanding of those going through the same thing because you remember and you realize how hard that struggle was. Jesus is able to understand our struggles and our weaknesses because he came through it himself. So don't think God is far off and doesn't care. He empathizes with us. He understands. My big idea today is simply this: a communication without empathy is only a connection. Communication without empathy is only a connection. I can pull up my phone. I have hundreds of contacts on there that I have that much of conversation with, real conversation with. I mean, I have about 10 to 15 that I actually really have conversation. Obviously, Beth being one. Sometimes my kids, when they randomly text me, I can tell they got their phone, they send me emojis and the poo emojis, and it's disturbing. But they're learning how to text and they're not 5 yet, so that scares me. But I say that because here's the thing. If empathy is not in my relationships when I communicate with the person, it's just a connection. And we want to have empathy for people. We're commanded to have empathy and understanding with each other, to get into each other's shoes. I'm making up for lost time. I've been a terrible reader my whole life, and so I have a goal. I'm trying to read 50 books this year. You can hold me to it, and come December 31st, check to see if I've done it, and if I haven't, make me do the walk of shame around the church or something. But I'm trying to read some of the books that I know a lot of people read in school, but my schools never required me to, so I went back to a classic with To Kill a Mockingbird. It took me about a week to read, which was amazing that I even got through it that quick. There was a line that stuck out to me with To Kill a Mockingbird, and the main character, Atticus Finch, says this to his daughter Scout. He says, "First of all, if you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along better with all kinds of folks. Catch this. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. Until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. You want to really like people, you want to really understand people, get in their skin. Understand how they perceive things, not just your understanding. But we're going to have to do it one-on-one, or one-on-two, or whatever it is. We need to do it in person. It's great, the tools we have. As I said, this is not an anti-technology thing. But remember the heart of what should be at this. Some conversations need to be had face-to-face. We can't keep using artificial means. There was a quote I read that said this: "Today we don't have to apologize to each other. We can type, 'I am sorry,' then hit send. But face-to-face, you get to see that you have hurt the other person. The other person gets to see that you are upset. It is this realization that triggers the beginning of forgiveness." Another quote by Sherry Turkle said this: "The empathetic relationship does not begin with, 'I know how you feel.'" I'm guilty of saying that. "Oh, I know how you feel." And it's true. But if I want to have empathy, it's more than that. It says it begins with the realization that you don't know how the other person feels. In that ignorance, you begin with an offer of conversation. Tell me how you feel. See, saying "I know how you feel" almost kind of ends it. But when we say to a person, "Tell me how you're feeling right now. Tell me how that impacted you. Tell me what you're struggling with," it's going to open up a lot more and a much more communication. You can be able to understand, put yourself in their shoes, and see things from their view. And maybe understand and draw closer to them. So, challenge this week. Here it comes, the painful one. Create opportunities for real communication and deep connection this week. Create opportunities for real communication and deep connection. Parents, I stand here, not perfect with this, and yet working on it, especially the last few months. Please take advantage and make opportunities this week that you have right in front of you, but you often fill with things that aren't as important. That may be the ride to school, if you take your kids to school, that you actually say, "No phones, we're going to talk." And if it's 5 minutes, it's still 5 minutes. It may be dinner time, device-free time. Put it away. It may just be when you get home at night that you put the phone off in the corner, turn the ringer on so you can hear it if it actually rings, look to see, I'm giving you permission to use caller ID, okay? After all of this, your kids are worth it. Create opportunities for deep conversation. Don't miss it. Because my worst fear as a parent is that when my kids are in their 20s and 30s, the one picture that they're going to have of their father when they think back was this. As they were standing right there trying to get my attention. Because this couple $100 piece of equipment competed with them. Work, you know what? Work. Maybe it's time to have some real conversations with work. Get some lunches going with people that you do business with, to talk with them face to face. Stop handling sensitive complaints and sensitive items. And stop handling it with the digital means because it's safe. I can sort of lob the grenade and let it blow up over there and be safe over here. Have the hard conversations. Because you might have them understand you more, and I know you'll understand them more. Spouses, we got to schedule in device-free date times. We have to. It's weird. I'm not going to lie. Beth and I just had one a couple weeks ago, and we ran down to Sadler's, and we didn't have any kids with us. The Shrins watched them. It was awesome. And we sat there, and I felt that inclination every once in a while when it was silence that I started to go, no, I can't pull out my phone. No. And we actually had to talk. It was weird, like adults, Some of us need that. Leave your phone in the car. With your kids and with your spouses, you only get so many chances. Jobs, you get chances. But don't mess up where it counts the most. If this phone, whatever computer controls you, that's what you're going to be remembered by. Empathize. See what's going on in their life. Get to know them. Change the culture. Let's be different. It's scary that there's device-free camps now for kids. And the kids are coming back from these device-free camps and they're like, man, that was awesome. And I can look at them and go, yeah, that was my growing up years. Isn't it cool when you actually talk to a person? Change the culture. Liz Berry and Bill Wetzel, two people, they've been going out on the streets in New York City, and they've been setting up in Times Square as well as other places around New York. And all they do is they sit there and they have a sign with them that has 3 words on it. Talk to me. That's it. And they sit there, and people come up to them and they're like, selling something, this is sort of weird. A lot of people sort of think they're strange, and they're like, no, we're just waiting to talk to us. That's it. And it's amazing how weirded out people are. But some people took them up on it. They said one of their first ones was a guy who sat down for an hour talking about real estate tax. That's gotta be pleasant. Yeah. But there were other people that came around. There was a mother who was upset. A teacher had hit her child. She vented. There's a police officer who talked about someone that he was dating, who broke up with him and then got engaged to his friend. There was another businessman who came and talked, and all these different people, different stories, and they just came and they just talked. There was this human they could talk to in person. The last person they had one night stayed for 3 hours and talked about broken dreams, broken relationship, lost job, talked about war, you name it. Just talked for 3 hours, and they just listened and interacted. And at the end of the 3 hours, it was 1 a.m. They said the guy got up, he dug into his pocket, he pulled out a $100 bill and offered it to him. I'm like, no, we don't want it. That's not why we're doing this. And he was perplexed by that. Isn't it sad that something as normal as just talking to a person face to face is now viewed as a luxury? That's something that should just be a part of being a Christian and being a human being. Let's change culture by doing what Jesus commands us to do and what Jesus himself did, by becoming empathetic and talking to people and understanding them face to face instead of using artificial means as our sole thing of communication. Let's pray. God, I stand up here, I feel like the chief of sinners when I talk about this. You know all of our struggle with this, and in the day and age and the culture where we are just so glued to these things that are wonderful, but yet are destroying us. And our relationships are not going as deep as they once were. Father, I ask for the parents here that need to reevaluate how much they've been spending on their phone instead of their kids or their spouse. Father, that you would help them, give them the energy, give them the desire for empathy, to understand the kids, give them fantastic conversations with their spouses and the kids that they just say, man, why would I go back to the phone? That was awesome. Lord, for some of us that have friendships or relationships that have been strained by this, and we've forgotten that our words carry weight and we've hurt people, or maybe they've angered us and we've never expressed that to them. Or that we would be bold, that we would step forward, that we would begin to do interactions with each other instead of these artificial means. Father, help us to get back to the heart of caring for each other more than ourselves. Give us these windows of opportunity this week where we have real conversation, where we put others before ourselves in humility, where we treat them as a VIP. Thank you for setting an example for us of coming into our mess. Though you could have done it afar off, you chose to come close. We lift this up to you in your name. Amen.